Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey mate, how's it going? Welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner. How we all doing? Good to see lots of you with us on this Tuesday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. What we're going to be doing on today's episode, well, we've got a fair bit to get through actually today. We're going to talk about the FA Cup third round draw that was made yesterday. We're going to start to build up to Arsenal's trip to Brugge, where they take on the Belgian side in the UEFA Champions League. Is it time for wholesale changes? I've made a list of players that I believe it is essential get a break in this one. We'll discuss what the lineup should look like in that case, in my view at least, on tomorrow's episode in the Matchday pod. But I've got that list of players that for me need a rest, so we'll get into that. We're also going to talk about the news that Gabriel Jesus has not been included in Arsenal's league phase squad. And then we're going to round up by talking Odegaard, Eze and Zubimendi. We did a Patreon pod yesterday, which is out for patrons now, in which we discussed the Martin Odegaard dilemma. And what I want to do is react to some of the responses that I've had to a clip that we put out from that Patreon episode across the various social media platforms. There's been a very common response that I've had back, and I just want to address it. And I just want to say it's not that simple. So we're going to do all of that on today's pod. A massive hello to everybody, as I say, who's live in the chat with us. Thank you for being with us. If you're watching this back later on, welcome. If you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, or any other platform, thank you so much for being with us. I really do appreciate it. How are we feeling? A couple of days sort of after, or 3 days now, isn't it, since the Aston Villa result, since the disappointing defeat. Look, on the day, I was really disappointed. That afternoon, I didn't want to watch the football, to be honest with you. Sunday, I found it very difficult to get into the football as a result of the way I was feeling off the back of the result the day before. On Sunday, the only game I watched was Napoli-Juve. I didn't bother with any of the Premier League games. Now, granted, it wasn't the best Super Sunday lineup, but I needed to step away from it. We recorded the pod on Sunday morning. We broke the game down. I shared my thoughts. I was quite strong in some of my opinions. I feel like there was a lot wrong with Arsenal at Villa Park. But I also think that now that I've had that time to kind of process it and remove some of the emotion from the conversation, I also feel like with our options being as limited as they were, there wasn't that much different that actually viably could have been done. Look, I've said it before. I'm not going to sit and make excuses this season. You know, we have got a very strong squad. Have we had more injuries than we would have liked? Yes. Can you argue that there's something wrong given the volume of injuries that we are currently sustaining? Yeah, you can. But I always say this when it comes to the injury debate and discussion. Like, I don't know what is going on. I don't know why this is happening. I don't have fitness data available to me. And even if I did, I wouldn't be able to decipher it into anything that made sense because I'm not an expert or even close to it in that field. There was a story yesterday that somebody at Arsenal, who's a soft tissue expert. Let me just bring this this story up. Hold on, so that I make sure I'm giving you the right information on this. Where is it? There we go. So Ryan Taylor reported yesterday that Arsenal's soft tissue therapist, Manuel Marcelo Ribeiro, has left the club to pursue a new business venture after joining from Chelsea, where he spent 15 years in July 2024. So he's been there, just over a year and a half, and he's left. Now, it does clearly state that the guy is leaving to explore a business venture, but given the volume of injuries that we're suffering with at the moment, there was a lot of people that jumped on that story yesterday and went, he's the culprit, and pointed the finger at him and said, he's been sacked, he's been kicked out. That's why he's leaving. That's the real reason why. But obviously, everybody involved is trying to save face. Again, We don't know that, man. So it's very easy to fall into the trap of kind of believing speculation or trying to add 2 + 2 and ending up with 6. It happens a lot in the football world, and I'm just wary of going down that rabbit hole with that one. But look, the injuries are a problem. They are an issue, but we've got the squad. And for me, there is no excuse not to go on and achieve something this season. I've said it from the outset. This is the first season in a number of years that there is an expectation from me rather than a hope. And expectation does mean pressure. It does mean high standards. It does mean high demands. But this is where we've wanted to be for such a long time. So let's embrace it. Let's take it on. And one of the competitions that, of course, we could potentially win is the FA Cup, a competition we have a very, very rich history in. And we've been drawn in the third round away to Portsmouth, a trip down to the south coast to take on Pompey at Fratton Park. Now, you might look at this and think Premier League versus Championship, there's only one winner. And in theory, there should only be one winner. But this is a trickier tie than people give it credit for. For anyone that's been to Fratton Park, you will know. You will know what I'm talking about here when I call it a tight, uncomfortable, and awkward place to play football. It's not that I would accept or tolerate Arsenal coming out performing poorly and being eliminated from the cup. Absolutely not. But it's not like a foregone conclusion that Arsenal, who will probably make changes, are going to go there and blow Portsmouth away. You know, I don't even know where they're at in the Championship right now. Let's have a quick look. Championship table. Where are Portsmouth? How are they doing? Portsmouth are down in 22nd in the Championship. So, yeah, I mean, everything points to the fact that we should beat them. But my point is, magic of the FA Cup, away from home, down on the south coast. The weather's probably going to be shit as well because it's going to be early January. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. It's going to be windy. I'm not saying that we don't win it or that we shouldn't win it or that we should accept anything less than progression. All I am saying is this. It could be an uncomfortable and awkward game. And therefore, you might see a slightly stronger team than what you'd normally pick in a tie like this. But look, it could have been much worse. We could have landed one of the Premier League teams. It's a bit annoying that it's away from home, but it is what it is. We take it on the chin and we move. We're going to have to win much harder games than that if we're going to win some silverware this season. So, yeah. In terms of Bruges, obviously Arsenal taking on the Belgian side tomorrow night in the UEFA Champions League. Mikel Arteta is due to give a press conference this evening. I think it's due at around about 7 p.m. local time. So it's probably about 6 p.m. our time. I'm not sure who the player is that's going to be with Mikel Arteta. As you can see, I'm not in Belgium. I'm here. I'll be covering the game on commentary from here. So we'll be in place on Thursday morning to bring you the review show. And of course, we'll bring you a more in-depth and detailed preview to that game on tomorrow morning's podcast. But as I said right at the top, I've put together a list of players whom I believe it is essential that we rest. Like, they just should not play. Have them on the bench, no problem, but they should not play unless we're in a serious dilemma, unless we're in a real shit position. We lose a load of others to injuries or whatever, basically, is what I'm trying to say, right? I don't want to see these players playing. The list that I've made consists of Timber, Calafiori, Rice, Zubimendi, Saka, Marino, Eze, and if they're fit, Saliba and Trossard. I don't want them anywhere near this game. I suppose you could put David Raya in there as well. Is there a bit of mental fatigue there, maybe? I've got no problem with Kepa Arrizabalaga playing in this game. We've won all our Champions League games so far. We are well within our rights, having achieved that, to go, right, maybe we got to throw one to make sure that we maintain a level of sharpness and to not overwork and overload players. Not just risking further injuries, but in terms of just adding additional load that ends up costing us later down the line. We can't afford for that to happen. Some would argue the opposite. Some would argue that we play Wolves on Saturday night. Wolves are hopeless, rock bottom of the table. I think they've only got 2 points on the board this season. You know, actually, you can kind of half rotate in this one and half rotate in that one and still be absolutely fine. The Champions League format has given us the luxury of choosing and prioritizing which games we take seriously and which ones we didn't. Look, I said it the other day, with the benefit of hindsight, were we wrong to go the way that we did against Bayern Munich? Because then in our subsequent 2 away games at Chelsea and Aston Villa, we were completely gassed out. And I think with hindsight, it is fair to say that. With Bruges, you know, I think you probably still have enough in the tank, even if you play at full tilt, to go and beat Wolves on Saturday night. But why take the risk? Like the fact that we've won all our Champions League games, we're unbeaten in the Champions League so far. Some people would see that as really, really precious and would want to hold on to that and maintain that record. Me, I don't care. And the reason I don't care is because we're still going to get through in the league phase with comfort, I believe. And on top of that, you know, we have just, as I've just mentioned a few seconds ago, watched Arsenal go out in some really important away games and look by 70 minutes completely done and dusted. Like we've got to be careful. We've got to prioritize. We've got to manage things smartly. Pep Guardiola did it the other week. You know, Pep Guardiola did it the other week. They lost at home to Bayer Leverkusen. In the grand scheme of things, if Manchester City go on and win silverware this season, who the hell is going to care? Who's going to care? And I appreciate the argument about momentum and, you know, maintaining standards and consistency and you know, maintaining good and strong habits. I get all of that stuff, but I just think when your squad is struggling in the way that ours is at this moment in time, we got to deal with it, and we got to take the sensible decision, in my opinion. Rumble says, "Do you do commentary from home or do you have to go to a studio?" I have to go to a studio. Yeah, I have to go to a studio. Because if you do it from home, there's delays, and you know if your internet goes down, you've got a problem, and yeah, so we do it from a studio. Okay, let's move on. So that's my list of players that need to be rested. Do you know what? I'm going to add David Raya to that list. I didn't have him on the list originally because I always think, goalkeeper, do you really need a breather? But I think mentally, he could probably do with that as well. So my list, just to repeat it, of players that I would give a break to, going to Bruges: Raya, Timber, Calafiori, Rice, Zubimendi, Saka, Marino, Eze, Saliba, and Trossard. And it's also worth noting that Rice and Marino, I think, are a booking away from missing the next Champions League game. So, yeah, probably wise to leave those guys out. Who comes in? Well, we'll go through that tomorrow. Will it be Norgard? Will it be Nwaneri? Will it be Madueke? You know, will it be Miles Lewis-Skelly? You know, will Odegaard continue in the team because he needs to build his fitness back up? Does Victor Gyökeres come back into the lineup? We'll get into all of that on tomorrow's pod. Do not fear. Okay, I mentioned the Champions League phase and the way it all works and how we have that just that little bit extra leeway as a result of it. I wanted to touch on the news that Gabriel Jesus has not been included in Arsenal's Champions League phase squad. And it sounds like, based on what Tom Canton reported yesterday, that due to Christian Mosquera's injury and the severity of it, that they're probably going to prioritize getting a defender in there instead. Listen, I get it, but I'd have liked to have seen Gabriel Jesus given the opportunity to work his way back into the picture, because I think we're missing that kind of chaos merchant, man. I really do. Like, I know we've done good things without Gabriel Jesus over the last couple of years because, quite frankly, we've had to, right? His injury problems have been so severe. You know, we've had really no choice but to just get on with it, and at times to almost not pretend he's not there, but you get what I'm saying. Like, as fans, when we're talking about our options and we're discussing who should play where versus who, you know, Gabriel Jesus hasn't been in the thinking for such a long time. But you look at some of those games that we've played in the last couple of weeks, Chelsea away, there were points in that game where it was very clear the only way we were potentially going to score was by going wide and working it into the box and playing that sort of percentage football. You look at the Aston Villa game, again, there were moments where Villa were camped really well and you had to go wide, and from wide, you're struggling to pick someone out in the box. Now, I'm not saying that Gabby Jesus brings that major physical presence that allows you to lump the ball into the box and hopefully be more effective. But what Gabriel Jesus does is he brings an unpredictability. A lot of the things that we've credited Gabriel Eze for this season, in terms of dribbling, in terms of changing direction, in terms of being sharp, quick feet, these are things that Gabriel Jesus has in an abundance. And as long as he's fit, he can be an asset and a help to this team. He can also come on and play from one of the flanks. And let me tell you this, right? If Gabriel Jesus came on away at Stamford Bridge on the left wing, now obviously he wasn't fit enough to do it, but if he did, or he came on the right wing at Villa Park on Saturday, let me tell you this, people are going to take this as if I'm having a pop at another player, but whatever, I'm going to say it. He wouldn't have done a worse job than Noni Madueke did in those two substitute appearances. In those two substitute appearances, and I'm not writing Noni Madueke off, but in those two appearances, he was poor, man. Really, really poor. Not as direct as we've come to expect, not as effective in terms of beating people, in terms of taking people on. Just completely, I don't want to use the term useless, but completely ineffective, I think is the politer way of putting it. When he played against Brentford, though, in the first half, he looked really good. So I think with Noni Madueke, he is one of those players that struggles to impact games from the substitutes bench. I think when he's starting a game and he's got that rhythm and that flow, he's absolutely fine. But when you start turning to him off the bench, you start to see that actually he needs maybe a bit more in terms of, just time to get into the game than other people. And maybe that makes him not a particularly effective substitute. I think Gabriel Jesus coming on at 100 miles an hour for the last sort of 15, 20 minutes of games, that could be really, really important to us between now and the end of the season, particularly if we find ourselves in some sticky situations. I really do think that Gabriel Jesus can still play a part. Loads of chat, loads of speculation about his future. I've been told categorically that there is no plan for Gabriel Jesus to leave in January. And it makes sense, because who's going to buy him? Like, who is going to put money down on the table to sign a Gabriel Jesus who's still yet to prove his fitness? He's come back from a second severe knee injury in the space of like 2.5 years. He's never going to attract money worth taking until he proves his fitness. So get him back in. He can be useful. He does have something to offer. Utilize him in whatever way is necessary and whatever way is possible. And we review his situation again come the summer. But I would have liked to have seen him in the league phase, at least included in the squad, so that he could come off the bench in some of our games, particularly if Mikel goes the way that he might go, which is take it seriously again and put another 3 points on the board. And then we've got some room to spare come the last couple of match days. If that's the case, especially, I would have liked to have seen him there, ready, available, and able to come on and help us in some capacity. So I'm a little bit disappointed about that. Okay, we're going to take a really, really short pause. When we come back, I'm going to let you know what's going on Patreon, and we are going to talk Odegaard. We're going to talk Eze. We're going to talk Martin Zubimendi. There is a lot to unpack there. It's a far more complex dilemma, issue, problem, some people want to call it, than I think people realize. And that came to me when I was reading some of the replies to the post that we put out yesterday. So yeah, looking forward to getting into that. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. We'll be back in just a mo.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Right. Patreon, right? There's a new Patreon episode out where we covered off the Martin Odegaard dilemma. That's what I called it. Not a problem. It's a dilemma. I don't know what the answer is. I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to the answer the more I think about it. So we're going to explore that in just a moment. But first of all, I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's signed up to Patreon recently. I'm really, really grateful for your support, and to those that continue to support us, those that have been there from day one. Really, really do appreciate it, because your support really, really does help. as Christmas is coming up, we're going to do a special offer on Patreon. So if you go over to our Patreon page and you can click on the link in the description, it will take you straight there. When you sign up, if you enter the code Xmas, that's the letter X, MAS 25, that will get you 50% off your first month's membership. It's Xmas 25. Go over, sign up. You'll get a bonus podcast, an additional podcast after every single match. Plus, you get access to all our main episodes completely ad-free. And should you wish, you can become a part of our Discord server as well. You'll be supporting the pod. You'll be helping me out massively in terms of, as a freelancer, as I always say, being able to spend more time working on this show that I love so dearly. 50% off, and that discount runs up until the 24th of December. So up until Christmas Eve. If you want to gift one to someone, you can. You can gift Patreon memberships to others as well, if that's something that you'd like to do. But yeah, discount 50% off your first month if you use the code Xmas 25. That's the code. It is, all the details are in the description below. If you need to copy and paste it, or you need any help there. Thank you so much. Right, let's get into the Martin Odegaard stuff then, shall we? Because this is interesting. This is really interesting. So on the Patreon pod yesterday, we talked about Odegaard, Zubimendi, Eze, right? How do you fit them all into the team without the balance being impacted? If you play Odegaard, Eze, and Zubimendi all in the same midfield, we can be run through too easily for me. Okay. That's why Declan Rice is so essential. So as a midfield three, Odegaard, Eze on the other side, and Zubimendi as the six, no go. You can run through us like you can put a knife through butter. It's just too easy. That is not the way you're going to see Arsenal line up, nor should it be. Eze playing on the left is okay in some instances. It's okay in some games. Okay. If you play him on the left in a game where he doesn't have to do much defending, where he doesn't have to track back a lot, then I can live with that. But if you play him on the left at a place like Villa Park, he's got to do the off the ball stuff that maybe we've come to take for granted because Saka does it so well and Martinelli has done it so well. And I would say that Leandro Trossard has improved in that department lately as well. Maybe we take that stuff for granted, but it was very clear and visible that if you don't do that in this Arsenal team, when we've got a left back that likes to go walkabouts as well, we're going to have problems. So the more I see Eze playing on the left-hand side, particularly in games like that. Now, I'm not saying it can't ever happen or it should never happen, but Villa Park was a prime example of the type of game that Eze cannot do that in unless he bucks up his ideas off the ball. We were exposed and we were punished for that. Martin Odegaard drew a lot of criticism for his performance at Villa Park, which I thought was a little bit over the top. I don't think, as I said in the reaction pod, that he was anywhere near as bad as some people made out. Equally, I didn't think he was amazing either. And I felt like some people were trying to prop up his performance to the point where, it was just completely over the top. And I feel like that was because maybe they'd seen some of the criticism. Maybe they felt that some of the criticism was harsh and they wanted to leap to the defense of their captain. And I think actually those are the two extremes. Those that said he played really well, I think you're going a little bit too far. Those that said he was completely useless and terrible, I think you're going too far. I think the truth on Odegaard versus Villa was somewhere in the middle. We talked about why it was that Martin Odegaard seemed to be in such deep positions at Villa Park on that Patreon pod. And now that the patrons have had a chance to hear that, I want to kind of put that point across to you guys, but also I want to build on it. I want to just kind of elaborate on the point a little bit. Lots of people looked at Martin Odegaard at Villa and said he was the problem. Why are you coming so deep? Why are you getting on the ball in those areas? Because then we're one attacker down. There's less players that you can work the ball through the lines into. We want you on the edge of the box where you can hopefully make a difference and make something happen. Yet every time we look up at the screen, you're sitting deeper and deeper. At points, he was going and dropping in between our centre halves to get on the ball. That's how deep he was going. And this is not an attempt to launch a defence for Martin Odegaard, because I would agree with those that say in the last couple of seasons, he's not been the Martin Odegaard that we had prior to that. He's just not been at that level. That is fair to say. And he knows that. He's even spoken about that, right? So it's not, a massive shock or surprise to hear someone say that. But what I would say is, where we all kind of looked at Odegaard at the weekend and sought to criticize him or to really kind of scrutinize his performance, what was completely overlooked was the fact that Martin Zubimendi was a complete non-entity at Villa Park. Is he tired? Is he fatigued? Don't know. Okay? Don't know. But this is my point. Unai Emery, going into that game, he knew that Arsenal, without Gabriel and Saliba at the back, would be less likely to distribute from centre-back straight into the midfield and beyond. They knew that in order for Arsenal to move the ball effectively, they had to go through another line. And they had to go through another line because neither Nketiah nor Jurrien Timber are going to sit at the heart of the defence, squeeze up as high as Gabriel and Saliba can, and be as comfortable in terms of getting their foot on the ball and distributing, playing the ball wide to the wingers nice and early, playing the ball through the lines to the likes of Martin Odegaard and Odegaard Eze, who do like to operate in those more central spaces. Unai Emery knew that if Arsenal's distribution from the back was going to be effective and good on the day, they would have to funnel most of it through Martin Zubimendi. So what does he do? He shuts Zubimendi down. Now, Zubimendi technically is an excellent footballer. No question about that. His touch, his control, although he didn't necessarily show that at Villa at the weekend, all of that stuff, there's no doubt Zubimendi is capable of that. Where the doubt has always been for me around Martin Zubimendi is physically. Is this guy physically up to it? When the going gets tough in this league of all leagues, can Martin Zubimendi be strong enough, be physically imposing enough and dominant enough? And the answer to that question is no. I can think of a number of games this season where I felt that Martin Zubimendi was off it in terms of the physical level. And Villa Park was another example of that. Because, okay, Arsenal are going to want to play through Zubimendi, but they realize that Unai Emery shut that route down. What do? Well, someone like Declan Rice, with his big physical frame, power, and stature, and I'm not saying that Martin Zubimendi can click a finger and become Declan Rice, but Declan Rice still wants the ball. Declan Rice will still get on the ball. Declan Rice would back himself to win some of those physical duels so that Arsenal still have that as a route in terms of progressing the ball forward. Martin Zubimendi just went missing. He went missing. And, whenever you criticize a player's performance or whenever you highlight something that you didn't quite like or agree with in a display, there will be people out there that take it to an extreme and say, oh, well, you're saying Zubimendi. No, I'm not saying that Zubimendi's a rubbish player or that I don't want him or that we shouldn't have signed him or anything like that. What I am saying is that Martin Zubimendi being completely redundant at the weekend, completely ineffective at the weekend, is a massive part of why Martin Odegaard was dropping into those positions. Martin Odegaard could see it. Martin Odegaard could see that through Nketiah and Timber, we were not progressing the ball through the lines, that we needed Zubimendi to be there, but Zubimendi was being taken out of the game. So rather than be completely useless, what Martin Zubimendi did on that day, by the way, to be clear, Martin Zubimendi stepped out of that area, taking whoever it was at that point that was man marking him with him, creating that hole for Martin Odegaard to drop into. Now, what I would have liked to have seen, having watched the game back now, is when that happened, I would have liked to have seen Odegaard Eze go, you know what? Martin Odegaard's dropped deep. Now he's vacated the space that I like to play in, the space close to the centre forward. I'm going to come more inside and I'm going to look to receive the ball from Martin Odegaard. That's how those two could have potentially combined at the weekend. Instead, Eze stayed in the half spaces because he was wary of venturing any further inside from fear of getting caught out. But in the end, he gets caught out anyway. So my point here is that there are other things like that were wrong with the system and the kind of setup at the weekend that could have made the whole thing better. If for example, Eze did want to make those movements inside when Odegaard was dropping deep, why couldn't Zubimendi have gone over slightly left to protect that hole a little bit more? Why couldn't Calafiori have sat in his actual position instead of doing what Calafiori does, which is going roaming? And again, like, this is what these guys do. This is what they're instructed to do. Fine. But my point is that when you're talking about a football team, particularly in the modern day, everything's connected. There are so many connections. There are so many partnerships that all impact and affect one another. And so, you know, one thing can make a big difference to 1, 2, 3 players. Like, and I just felt like, yes, maybe Odegaard was dropping too deep too often. Yes, you don't want him in that area of the pitch necessarily. You want him higher up. But there's got to be a reason for why that was happening. And it's a reason that is far more complex than Martin Odegaard just going, you know what? I'm going to drop deeper today. That wasn't what happened. It was a reaction to what was happening in the game. And my point is that Zubimendi being marked out of the game was just as impactful as anything else in the decisions that Odegaard was taking to drop deep. Let's have a look at what you guys are saying in the live chat on this. Perez says, Zubi does not have a physicality issue, Harry. He was doubled up on. It wasn't physicality. It wasn't the battles. No, but yeah, he was doubled up on. I literally started this section by saying that Unai Emery shut the roots down and that Unai Emery made sure Arsenal couldn't play through him. So I acknowledge that there is a tactical element to this. I literally just said it. But a player of greater physical stature just goes, bring it on, and stands up to it. Martin Zubimendi can't do that. He can't do that. And again, you choose what you want, right? You get some players that are of a super high technical level, but you know, physically they're lacking a little bit. We've seen many of those in the past succeed. A great example of that is Jorginho, right? Jorginho was a great example of that. Technical level, outstanding. Ask him to sit in the 6 on his own. Physically, he will get overrun and overpowered. And Zubimendi is very, very similar in that sense. Okay, I'm not saying he's as immobile as a 30-plus Jorginho. I'm not saying that. But he's certainly not Declan Rice in terms of mobility. He's not. Why is it so taboo to say that? Why do people get so defensive when we say that? Kian Lewis says, I think you're doing a bit too much regarding Zubimendi's physicality. Well, Aston Villa were able to... If Zubimendi is the perfect all-round midfielder, no one is perfect, by the way. So, like, I'm not holding him to that standard. But if he is, then he deals with it, right? Like, he doesn't allow Aston Villa to shut him down in that way. He goes and finds a different way of influencing the game, and we just didn't. We just didn't. I don't get why people get so defensive of it. Anyway, apparently I'm Arsenal's PR machine because I'm talking about. But again, like, this is the thing. When did I say that Martin Odegaard's performance was great? I literally started the section by saying that Martin Odegaard wasn't terrible. He wasn't as good as some people made him out to be. He wasn't as bad as some people made him out to be. This is nothing to do with any really of these players in terms of me sort of going, you're the one sole issue, the one sole problem, and you're the one that's to blame and you got to get out of the team. Mikel Arteta has to find a way of getting that balance right, and he didn't get it right against Villa. Now, again, I made the point on the main pod that had Trossard been fit, had Gyökeres been fit, we probably start with a different team, and in my opinion, a team that is much better geared to being effective on that particular day. That wasn't the case. There's not a great deal you can do about that. But I do think that Zubimendi, Odegaard, and Eze all had an impact on each other's games the other day, which is the point that I'm making. What else have we got in the chat? Afsar says, why does Unai always tactically outcoach Arteta? It's now 8 out of 10 games he has won or drawn to get the better out of Arteta. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Unai Emery, yeah, I said it in the reaction pod, he's got our number to a point, right? He knows what we're all about. He understands Arteta's way. He understands Arteta's philosophy. And Unai Emery is very, very good at being a sort of a reactive coach more than a proactive coach, if that makes sense. He's very good at making tweaks and adjustments to react to what they're up against. And that's why he's always great when he's at a club that maybe is slightly less fancied than he was when he was at Arsenal or when he was at PSG, where there was that expectation to be the one that forces the issue all the time. If you're the guy whose job it is just because of the food chain and the way things go, that needs to make your team competitive, and you're okay compromising on your sort of core principles at times to do that, then you're going to be successful. Like I can think of loads of coaches over the years, like people like Sam Allardyce at his peak, right? He was great at shutting down the big boys and getting results against the big teams by playing in a certain way. But he never got a major job. Like, well, he got the England job and he messed that up because he got drunk and said something in a pub or whatever it was. But he never got a Man United or an Arsenal job or a Liverpool job or a Chelsea job because nobody ever really felt that he could be that guy, the guy whose team were the ones tasked with being on the front foot, being, the aggressor all the time. No, what he was great at was being a nullifier. And Unai Emery can do a bit of both, to give him credit and to give him his flowers, but he's more, I think he comes into his own more at a club like Aston Villa, where it is to a degree about shutting the others down at the same time. Let's see what's going on in the live chat. Guna Oz says Rice and Zubi played so much in October and November and barely got rotated. The opposition manager would sooner or later find ways to contain them, if not them being fatigued. Yeah, and I've already said it, like fatigue probably plays a part here. In fact, it definitely does. So I don't want to I don't really understand, if I'm honest, why it is that whenever you say something about a player, people sort of jump to his defense and accuse me of being sort of overly critical of any one individual. But then at the same time, you call me a PR merchant as well. Surely if I was an Arsenal PR merchant, I'd be sticking up for Zubimendi, the player that they spent a hell of a lot of money to bring in the summer. But anyway, just rolling through the chat to see what you guys are saying. Andy says, if you insist on dominating all aspects of a football game, shouldn't you be looking to be extremely mindful of rotation in a preventative way when you also know and complain of the devilish schedule? 100%. And I made the point yesterday, and I've made the point many, many times. Why haven't we used Christian Norgard? Why haven't we used Christian Norgard? Like, I don't get it. I agree with you. Like, we keep talking about rotation, about making changes, about freshening it up. We all thought that when we signed Christian Norgard, he'd be someone that would be in and out of the team. And again, like, and I made this point yesterday, I just want to reiterate it. I'm not saying that Christian Norgard should start every game. I wouldn't have picked Christian Norgard to start at Aston Villa. But when you get to the last 20 minutes or so and your legs are gone, surely, having spent the money to bring him in, having identified him as someone who can bolster your options, be an important part of the squad, surely you would bring him on, right? But we don't. So when I was getting loads of crap from people because I said I don't know if he's Arsenal level, well, clearly Mikel Arteta don't know either if he's Arsenal level, because if he was adamant and certain that he's good enough to step in, he would have brought him in. And he hasn't. He hasn't. What else have we got? Obviously, there's certain people in the chat jumping to Christian Norgard's defense again, as if they need defending from me. Jesus Christ! I mean, the guys. Look, let's have a look. He's played in the Champions League. Okay, let's have a quick look at this. In the Champions League, Christian Norgard has played, right, He has played a total of 90 plus 17. That's 108 minutes. That's what he's played in the Champions League. 108 minutes in total. In the Premier League, he's only made 3 appearances, and we're 14 games into the season, 15 games into the season. Okay, granted, he missed a few, but guess how many he's played since? He was back in the picture and available, okay, from from September. The 21st of September, 2025, when we drew 1-1 at home to Manchester City, Christian Norgard was on the bench. Guess how many minutes he's played in the Premier League since then? Anybody want to take a wild guess in the chat? How many minutes has Christian Norgard played in the Premier League since that game back in September against Manchester City? So we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. In 11 of those fixtures, 11 of our Premier League games, how many minutes has he played? I'll give you the answer. 14. 14 minutes. That's all he's played. He came on for 13 minutes away at Burnley, and he played 1 minute at Fulham away. That's it. He's been fit for Sunderland away, Tottenham at home, Chelsea away, Brentford at home, Villa away. 5 games. Sunderland, we look knackered. Chelsea, we look knackered. Villa, we look knackered. Didn't come on to play a single minute in any of those games. How can people tell me that Arteta trusts him? Like, I've got a point. I've got a point. I'm sorry. I've got a point. And also, I would argue that Ethan Nwaneri as well should be playing more than he is. 100%. At least with Ethan Nwaneri as well, I'm more convinced of his level. I'm more convinced that he's good enough, and I'm more convinced that he can impact football matches. But my point that I'm trying to make here is that we keep talking about the squad, and it's all well and good having that squad, but you've got to use the squad. Arteta needs to be more open to using those players. And again, it doesn't have to be starting them from, the beginning of games. Like Brentford, we were 1-0 up. I kind of understand why there was a reluctance to make that change, because it was 1-0 right until the 91st minute. Okay. But Chelsea, we were dead on our feet. Villa, we were dead on our feet. Sunderland, after 75, 76 minutes, whenever it was that Leandro Trossard scored the second goal, we should have brought Christian Norgard on to shut it down, to help shut it down. Just sit in the midfield. Be physical, make tackles, get across the pitch. Make sure that we're not soft-centered. Make sure that people aren't getting at us. Bring his height into the picture to help defend set pieces. I really do feel like we've not utilized some of those players in the way that we should. And okay, it's happened now, but we got to learn from it, and we got to fix up, because there's a long season still to be played. Okay, we've got a lot of games coming thick and fast. We're still in the cup, the League Cup, that is. The FA Cup kicks off for us next month. You've got Premier League games coming thick and fast. Champions League games coming thick and fast. What the hell was the point in assembling this group if you're not going to use the group to its maximum? And if it's because he does not think that Christian Norgard is good enough, then I would say, well, I was right in the summer when I said, why are we signing him? If Ethan Nwaneri isn't good enough to play for Arsenal, which he absolutely is, by the way, why did we give him a new contract? Why did we make sure that he stayed at the football club? So I wouldn't be complaining half as much if I thought that physically we were fine. But we have rinsed Declan Rice, right? He picked up an injury. He had to go off against Brentford. We start him at Villa. We play him against Villa. And, he clearly wasn't at it. And we saw the effects. And maybe if he was at it and at a higher level, maybe we don't get the result that we do. Maybe we get something slightly more. Maybe we're able to control the midfield a bit better than we did. There is so much responsibility on Declan Rice physically, especially when he plays with Zubimendi and Odegaard and Eze on the left, because he's got to then come across to the left-hand side and clean up at times as well, like he did when he made that block from Matty Cash prior to Aston Villa breaking the deadlock. I just think that, we've got to be careful with certain players. We've got to protect certain players. And everybody told me in the summer that the ones we bought were good enough to come in and give us that cover. And granted, we've had some injuries and we've had some problems, that Christian Nørgaard's been fit for a while now. Christian Nørgaard's been available. He's been on the bench in the Premier League since the 21st of September, and he's played a total of 14 minutes. That isn't right. And that's really not right when you look at how Rice and Zubimendi suffered at Villa at the weekend as a result of mainly being run into the ground. So that's my point. That's my point on that. I'm going to take one or two more questions before we sign out. Matthew says, Harry, we gave Nwaneri a contract to protect his value. He's also a bit flaky for me, and we have Eze to play in his position when Odegaard is out. Yeah, but okay, we gave him the contract partly to protect his value, sure. But he can come on and do a job. He absolutely can. He is good enough. He should absolutely start against Brugge. 100%. It's one of those things where you either sort of look at your squad and you sort of talk about it in really glowing terms, and you talk about everyone sort of being engaged and being a part of it, and you accept that at times your level is going to be slightly lesser when you have to change certain players. But you do that because you feel like in the bigger picture, that's going to benefit you in the long run and it's going to work over the course of the season. I've always said, getting the balance right in terms of rotation, changes. That's Mikel Arteta's biggest challenge this season. But I think when you look at people like Nwaneri, like Nørgaard, and they're basically getting no chances, no opportunities whatsoever, yet at the same time, you're looking at a Declan Rice who's dead on his feet, a Martin Zubimendi who's dead on his feet, a Martin Odegaard who's playing in games and he's just not working. It's just not happening. Why not? Why not throw those guys on and give them an opportunity? None of them are calamitous players. None of them are going to cost you. But yeah, I don't know. Let's move on from that. I feel like I've ended up going all ranty on this podcast. But the reason I kind of respond like that is because I know what I'm saying is coming from a place of fairness, okay? It is a very, very fair criticism to question why Christian Nørgaard was brought in the summer only to play barely any minutes, even when fit, and for us to see something that we hoped we'd avoid this season, which is some of our key players being run into the ground. Now, we've had some situations where we've had no choice but to play those players. But in the midfield, we have had a choice. We have had choices available to us, and we've chosen not to take them. And then you see us at Chelsea, dead. You see us at Villa, dead, right? Schedules to blame, of course. Injuries around the group have made life more difficult. But we could have done more in order to try and protect these players. And I don't think it's unfair to raise that question. And the reason I get so passionate about this is because people try and dress criticism up to be something way more sinister than it actually is. Do I agree with every decision that Mikel Arteta makes? No. But do I think he's the right man to be Arsenal manager? Yes, I do. Do I agree with everything my wife says? No, but I love her and she's my wife. And so I'm married to her. You're not always going to agree on everything. And just because you disagree on something, it doesn't mean that there's an agenda or that there's a motive behind it and all the rest of it. It's just people just being so childish. Can't we have a sensible, grown-up debate about these things? I think that Declan Rice and Zubimendi both have to be rested in Brugge. Both of them. And if that means that the door is open for Nørgaard and Nwaneri to come in and hopefully show what they're made of, great. But then if they come in and they don't play particularly well, people are going to be on their backs. And I'm going to turn around and I'm going to say, well, when have they had an opportunity to find any rhythm? They haven't. Because they're not even getting 5-10 minutes at the end of games at this moment in time. They're not getting anything. They're not getting anything. Lyle, Buck and John says, does Burton need to step in and tell Arteta to use the players, or we get rid of them and get the ones that he will use? I think I think it's unrealistic to think and expect that you're going to have a squad of, and I've said this before, of 22, 23 players all of an equal level. You just won't get that. But it's about knowing when you can afford a certain drop-off. So, like, for example, if I've talked about the midfield, like a lot of people at the start of the season, weren't they, when we were maybe not creating as much, were saying things to the effect of, we should play a midfield trio of Zubimendi, Odegaard and Eze, which I thought was mad. There was people saying that, and I thought that was mad because, first of all, you can't take Declan Rice out because you're going to get run through. So I'm kind of the opinion that, like, if Declan Rice doesn't play, Norgard has to play because you need that bigger, stronger, physical, more powerful midfield player in there. If Rice plays, then you can take Zubimendi out. If Odegaard's in, you can take Zubimendi out because Odegaard can drop deeper, get on the ball and move it through the lines. Marino offers something in there. And again, it's not that any of them are bad players individually. Of course they're not. They play for Arsenal Football Club, who are sitting at the top of the Premier League and at the top of the Champions League. It's not because they're bad players. Balance is everything, man. Balance is everything. There are certain things that you require from your midfield. There are certain things that Rice does, certain things that Zubi does, that Marino does, that Eze does, that Odegaard does. And what it is about making the right cocktail for every game, basically. And sometimes, if you run out of vodka, stick a bit of rum in there, right? If Declan Rice has run out of juice, stick Christian Norgard in there, stick Mikel Marino in there. Now that Gyökeres is back, you can do that. I think for me, Rumble says we should have the balance by year 6. I think generally we do. But it's just been a couple of things in the last few games that have worried me and concerned me a little bit. And the main thing being the fatigue element. And I just think we've got the players to help with that. And we're not doing it. We're not doing it. Anyway, look, I'm going to love you and leave you all. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Remember, check it out on Patreon, the Odegaard Dilemma Pod, which we did yesterday. And remember, if you're thinking about signing up for Patreon, there is a Christmas discount available to you where you can get 50% off your first month. The details are in the description below. The discount code there and the link is also there as well. Thank you all once again for your love and support and for the good, healthy debates in the chat box. I don't have an agenda against any Arsenal player. I want them all to succeed. I want us to win it all. But I do think that some of the stuff I said in the summer, and nobody likes someone that blows their own trumpet, has come to fruition. And yeah, maybe I'm not as wild in my views as some of you think. I'll catch you all soon. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Symeou time. Come on, you Gunners.